How many times have you found yourself thinking, why is my class behaving like this? If you want insight, support, and strategies for teaching social studies, be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell to be notified anytime a new video drops. And if you're new here, hi, I'm Cecilia Tamez, and I'm an experienced educator and consultant. And I help social studies teachers feel confident and competent by providing resources, support, and solutions for passionate history teachers like you. Okay, so this is kind of an odd way to start this video, but I promise it does have a point. So I don't know if y'all know this, but I happen to definitely be a plant lady. Now the thing is, I'm not very gifted at always keeping all the plants alive, but I am gifted at the actual planting process. The thing is that oftentimes people just plant their bulb and they assume that with sunshine and water, you know, the basics, that their plant should thrive on its own. And the truth is there are so many varieties of plants that all have different needs and different growth rates, and they have different requirements, that there's actually a lot of prep work involved in creating the right environment for that plant to thrive. And the truth is, just sunshine and water are not going to cut it for these plants. And I feel like sometimes we focus as teachers so much energy on actually the management part, the classroom management part, that we skip all these foundational layers that actually support the healthy functioning of our classroom management system. Preventing behavior problems in your class starts on day one. You have to remember that you are the first example of your class culture, the expectations, and the boundaries that you set for your classroom. So the very first step in being proactive about preventing classroom behavioral problems is actually to model what you expect from your class. Now, what I'm going to say next is going to be a hard pill to swallow, but I feel like it needs to be said because this could save you so much time and trouble. You cannot realistically expect your students to be anything that you are not willing to be. If you do not want students on their phone while you're teaching class, then you can't be on your phone. If you don't want your students answering sarcastically in your class to each other, to you, then you will need to be careful not to be sarcastic with your class. If you want your students to show up with high energy and enthusiasm, you want to make sure that you do your best to show up to class with that high energy, with that enthusiasm, because this is the logic that our students apply. How can my teacher tell me not to do something and then they go off and do it themselves just because they're the adult? Because we are the adults in the classroom, we have to set that example. And not only that, but really modeling these expectations really helps our students to understand that our classroom is a team, students and teachers included. Like if we are all without a phone, then we're all gonna be without a phone. If we're not allowed to eat in our classroom, then none of us are gonna eat in the classroom. It really demonstrates to your students from the first day that you plan on being fair and that you plan on being equitable across the board. That in itself will help you build rapport with your students from the first day. Now, when it comes to modeling expected behavior, is it strange to have to model and showcase and practice with our class basic things like how to walk through the door, how to take our seat, how to look prepared? Yeah, probably. Especially the older your students get, it's gonna be weird, but do it anyway. Now, the reason you still want to take the time to do this is because it's gonna help your students internalize not just what they need to do, but how you expect this process to get done, what it actually looks like. Now, here's a little bonus tip. If you actually take the time to win your students over, they will actually humor you to do things the way you expect. Okay, so let's talk about procedures. Now, I mentioned that preventing behavior problems starts day one. And the way this process starts is by creating proactive procedures. Now, here's the thing. People are not likely, well, at least I hope not, they're not likely to follow procedures mindlessly just for the sake of having a process. That means that you need to take the time to explain to your students why you have that class process. If it logically makes sense to your students, like, okay, I see why we have to do things a certain way. It's not just my teacher, you know, being a nitpick, like it does actually need to be this way because this. So if you can get your students to understand that reasoning, they're more likely to comply because there's a logical reason behind why you're asking them to do things a certain way. Now, you want to make sure that you don't overwhelm your students with all the procedures they're going to need all year because it's just too much. So start with the ones they're going to use first and then kind of build from there. Now, I know sometimes there is a tendency to emphasize class rules and consequences because there's this misconception that rules and consequences are actually a proactive way to prevent behavior problems. But the truth is, procedures and positive reinforcements will do more for you than rules and consequences ever could. Now, I'm not saying that we eliminate consequences. More than anything, this video is focused on being proactive so that you can influence your students' behavior from the first day and not really have to resort to consequences. Now, there's a reason why grading in class and getting that immediate feedback works. Think back to when you were a child, right? If you ever got burned, unfortunately, you learned via immediate feedback that when you put your hand near a flame, a consequence is going to happen, right? You're going to get burned. There is a reaction for our action. Now, here's the important part. When a student reacts or acts a certain way, you cannot allow the immediate reaction, your immediate feedback, to be you getting triggered. Because if you allow yourself to get triggered, you lose power as a facilitator in your classroom. The minute that you step away from being this omniscient presence that's there to help your students manage and regulate their emotions and model how to keep them in check, the minute you step away from being that omniscient facilitator and you allow it to get personal, then it becomes a power struggle. When you think of proactive classroom management, I need you to think of yourself as a facilitator in your class, a behavior facilitator. So you want to think that you are there to support your students in de-escalating themselves because clearly they don't have the wisdom or maturity or the know-how to actually be able to do this themselves. This means that you as the teacher do need to know how to de-escalate, how to maintain your self-control. You can't teach it to your students and you can't show them how to de-escalate themselves if you do not know how to do it for yourself. Now, I'm curious to know what kind of behavior problems you're looking to prevent in your classroom. Let me know in the comments below. I would love to do maybe a little mini series or something to that extent to help you brainstorm some proactive procedures, classroom procedures that may actually help you redirect that specific behavior. Now, I know this may be a little bit controversial, and I'll be the first to admit, I personally resisted this life-changing process for about at least 8 years into my teaching career because, one, I didn't know how to implement this process without feeling like I was losing my power as the teacher. And two, unfortunately, I was bought into the idea that it was my job and responsibility to control the classroom. But in reality, my role is to facilitate. And, it wasn't until that clicked for me that I was okay with letting go of some of that control mentality and actually making my students active participants in our classroom guidelines, in the classroom culture, in our classroom procedures. I cannot stress this enough. You have no idea how much listening to your students and making them a part of your classroom management system is going to change the game for you. I mean, just think of the Mayflower Compact, right? Historically speaking, this compact worked, this social compact worked because people had an actual say and an active role in creating the expectations for the new colony. If you think about it, why it worked is because it made them feel heard, it made them feel valued, it made them feel seen, which is a great foundation for a teacher that wants to build an inclusive classroom environment. Now, if you're looking to create a more inclusive classroom environment, be sure that you check out my video, How to Create an Inclusive Classroom, and I will go ahead and link that below for you to watch after you're done watching this video. Now, just to be clear, this doesn't mean that you're allowing your students to create like bogus rules or really throw your expectations out the window. But, giving them a structured forum where they can contribute what they expect from their learning environment and their teacher will definitely change the game. And yes, you heard that right. I said your teacher. When you take the time to learn what students expect of you, You gain valuable insight about how you can make all your students feel valued, seen, heard, and welcome. And remember that if your students feel heard and seen and valued, they are more likely to respect the classroom procedures and expectations that are established, especially if they contributed to the establishment. So this is the most important preventative measure you can take to curb discipline problems. Now, I just want to emphasize something really quick. Your students' reactions are out of your control. I don't want you to feel burdened into thinking that every student reaction is your fault and gaslighting you into feeling like all your school's disciplinary problems are on your shoulders, because I've been there before and I know exactly how that feels. But I also know, having been in the classroom as long as I have, that there are certain ways that we can discourage disruptive behavior. And I've learned that one of the most powerful ways to do that is by establishing strong rapport and strong relationships with our class. And I gotta be honest with y'all, I feel like in years where I had students acting up and I would sit there and ask myself, like, why are my students doing this? Like, I'm giving it my all. I realized that I was not loving my students enough. I wasn't showing that I was personally invested in them. I wasn't listening enough. And I know this is gonna sound super cheesy, but loving my class at their most unlovable actually fixed the problems for me. Now, psychology shows us that people have a tendency to continue the behavior that they feel yields them the greatest reward. This means that if the reward your students are itching to see is you triggered, and you reward them by not having that self-control, and your first feedback to their disruption is you being triggered, then the behavior will continue because they are being rewarded by getting the outcome that they wanted. Now, if you react as this level-headed facilitator, then you are removing the reward that students create for themselves when they see that you don't get triggered. There's no fun in that. So you remove that desire, that reward. Now, this is why I mentioned relationships are important. If you win your class over and their desire is to live up to your expectations because they think you're so cool and you're, the hippest teacher on campus, then they are going to want to continue to act in ways that will yield, you giving them positive praise, positive reinforcement. They want to be in your good graces because it feels good to them. Your approval is the reward. This is why it's so imperative that you win your class over. Now, if you've had challenging years in the past and you are looking to change that once and for all, click the link below to learn more about my upcoming Mindful Management Crash Course. This is a self-paced program for teachers that want to work with human psychology, they want to leverage the expertise of a veteran educator, and they want to take a more proactive versus reactive approach when it comes to classroom management. If you want to feel confident in your management and you want additional insight, if this sounds like something you'd be interested in learning more about, make sure you click the link below so you can get all the details. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, class dismissed.